Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have one question for you. Are you conscious? Do you have a consciousness? Are you self aware? And what does that mean? Now, that might sound like a simple question, right? Because you might just be like, Tony, are you genuinely an idiot? Of course, I'm conscious. I logged onto YouTube and I'm watching your video. Clearly, I'm aware. All right, well, I guess the video's over. No, but how can I put this? So there's this test called the mirror test. So what is this mirror test? So the way they judge self-awareness is through this mirror test, and apparently only a few animals can pass the mirror test. So the mirror test is exactly what it sounds like. What animals can see themselves in the mirror and have enough awareness to understand that it's actually them they're looking at. Because most animals and most creatures and most living things, when they look in the mirror, they have no idea that it's actually them. So here's a list of a few animals that pass the mirror test. So there's chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, dolphins, elephants, humans, and it says here possibly pigeons. You know, pigeons, crows. I know crows are considered to be very smart, so that wouldn't surprise me. But surprising here is gorillas generally don't pass the mirror test. Now, there was that super genius Einstein gorilla. The gorilla's name was Coco. That particular gorilla could pass the mirror test. So see, there are geniuses within a species. So that's interesting to know that there could be a genius gorilla out of all of them. But there's a couple of things here that are kind of like sad. For example, well, let's start with, so a child, a baby, has no self-awareness until they reach about 2 years old, which is kind of crazy because, so you're born, and somewhere at around 2 years old, you look in the mirror and you realize that that's actually you. So something happens to you, to a baby at around 2 years old, some switch inside of your head. You go from unconscious to conscious somehow magically, right? That's the mystery of consciousness. Like, nobody knows what exactly is happening there, but somehow a baby's born. When a baby is 1 year old, when a baby is 1 year old, it looks in the mirror, has no idea that it's actually them. A year and a half, maybe, but somewhere at around 2 years old, most babies/children start to become aware that that's actually them in the mirror. Now, what exactly is happening there in the brain that makes them self-aware? So with the babies, it's fascinating. But the one that kind of breaks my heart and is kind of sad is dogs. We all love dogs and they're smart. Now, apparently dogs and cats both don't pass the mirror test. It's kind of heartbreaking, right? Because we want dogs and cats to be smart, self-aware. But apparently there are no dogs or cats that pass the mirror test. So your sweet, loving dog doesn't pass the mirror test. So you think, oh, man, that sucks. But I know my dog loves me. It's aware. It's happy to see me. So what's going on there, right? Now, I have an answer for that might be possible. Now, this thing with consciousness is a tricky thing because no one really knows the mystery of consciousness. There are no scientists. The mystery of consciousness is something that no one really has a grasp of. So what's going on with dogs, right? Or awareness. So dogs and cats don't pass the mirror test. That's sad. But what if something else is going on there? So this idea of recognizing yourself in the mirror. maybe dogs are aware, they have awareness, they have consciousness, but they just don't really identify with the self. Now, if you don't identify with the self, that makes it sound like maybe you're dumb. Like an elephant or a dolphin sees itself in the mirror and that's me. So you think a dog can't, so I guess it's probably just dumber. But it just might be a completely different experience, and I'll explain why. So a lot of the times with people who've done psychedelics, or maybe they meditate really deeply and they go to another place, the most amazing experiences someone has ever had, a lot of the times when they're on psychedelics, is an experience that didn't include the self at all. So they're in a place, they're completely in the moment, there's things going on, but they don't really have a self or an ego. They're just having an experience in a moment. But they're fully aware of themselves. They know that they're having an experience, but they're not. So you come out of the psychedelic experience and you think about it for a moment because you're thinking, wow, that was an amazing experience. But what you realize is that during that experience, you're there, you're completely conscious and aware, but it's not really tied to a self. It's not tied to an identity or like a person. It's just an experience. So maybe with a dog, it's not that it's dumber, but maybe it's just simply having an experience and it's not tied to a personal self. So it's weird because we think that, well, it's a dog, it can't recognize itself in the mirror, so it's probably not that smart. But maybe it's just really dogs. Maybe that's why dogs are so loving. And, people always say dogs have this innocence and this unconditional love about them because, well, maybe, when people say, oh, I had an ego death and it was, I didn't see myself as a person anymore. I was just like everything and it wasn't about me. Maybe that's what a dog is like, right? Because think about if you've ever had a psychedelic experience or if you've ever heard stories of somebody saying they reported no sense of self or ego, but they're hyper aware. The experience they had in the psychedelic trip was amazing. They saw colors they've never seen before. They've seen shapes, visions, entities they've never seen before. So they're having this very vivid, lucid, aware experience, yet it wasn't really tied to a self or an identity. And then when they come back and they wake up, they kind of get back into their identity and they can kind of like contemplate it. But during that psychedelic trip, it's almost like they didn't really have an identity or a self, right? So you could be hyper conscious during a moment of having no awareness of yourself. So that mirror test, it's interesting to see which animals pass the mirror test, but also the way a dog experiences reality. Maybe it's not tied to a self that much. And maybe that's why when we see a dog not pass a mirror test, we think, oh, that's kind of sad because I was hoping my dog was really smart. But maybe your dog is super aware and it's just not really tied to a self. And that's why the mirror really kind of means nothing to a dog. Because when you think about it, even when you dream most times at night, you're having the experience, but how often are you really checking yourself out in the mirror in a dream? It's really just about the experience you're having. It's almost like it's not really about you. It's just about a certain experience you're having, right? Maybe that's what a dog's life is like, and that's why the mirror maybe just means nothing to a dog. And that's it. So this was a video on can you pass the mirror test, and I bet you can. Because if you can't, I have no idea how you logged onto YouTube and did any of this stuff. That's kind of weird, but that's it. See you in the next video. Bye.